Hi, Miss Hutchinson here to help you write effective summaries. So in this video, I'm going to talk with you about evaluating ideas, details in your text so that you can summarize your text. And then, so this will include writing a summary with those key ideas and then revising your summary to include descriptive language and transitions so that by the end of this video, you will be able to write a well-constructed summary that includes descriptive language and uses transitional words or phrases, and that can score a passing grade on the rubric, but more importantly, will show how well you understand what you have read. And that's really the function of a summary, is to show your understanding and to help you know that you can summarize, because that's a big indicator whether or not that you're comprehending what's on the page. So let's get to it. The Shepherd Boy and the Wolf by Aesop. A shepherd boy tended his master's sheep near a dark forest not far from the village. Soon he found life in the pasture very dull. All he could do to amuse himself was to talk to his dog or play on his shepherd's pipe. One day, as he sat watching the sheep and the quiet forest, and thinking what he would do should he see a wolf, he thought of a plan to amuse himself. His master had told him to call for help should a wolf attack the flock, and the villagers would drive it away. So now, though he had not seen anything that even looked like a wolf, he ran toward the village, shouting at the top of his voice, "Wolf! Wolf!" As he expected, the villagers who heard the cry dropped their work and ran in great excitement to the pasture. But when they got there, they found the boy had doubled up with laughter at the trick he had played on them. A few days later, the shepherd boy again shouted, "Wolf! Wolf!" Again, villagers ran to help him, only to be laughed at again. One evening, as the sun was setting behind the forest and the shadows were creeping out over the pasture, a wolf really did spring from the underbush and fall upon the sheep. In terror, the boy ran toward the village, shouting, "Wolf! Wolf!" But though the villagers heard the cry, they did not run to help him as they had before. "He cannot fool us again," they said. Liars are not believed even when they speak the truth. So there's the story of the shepherd boy and the wolf by Aesop. All right, so let's get to work. So your first task is to write a summary. Write a summary of the story, about 4 to 8 sentences. Do the best that you can. As I said, you can look this story up on the internet or see if I have a copy to show you, so you can refer back to it, but I'm not going to give you any other instruction other than to think about what you think should be in the summary. And you've had instruction over the years, so just sort of think about what you remember a good summary includes. So please pause the video while you write that summary, and then when you're finished, you can come back and then we'll go on to step 2. Okay, so now you're back. So let's read my model of the first draft here, a summary with no instruction. There is a kid who is a shepherd. He yells and tells everyone there is a wolf. The townspeople come and see that there isn't one and leave. He does this again, and there is the same result. A wolf then shows up, and when the boy yells, no one comes. He eventually dies. Well, actually his sheep die, but there are many versions of this story out there because it's so old. So this story is adequate. This summary is adequate. It does summarize, but it leaves nothing in terms of telling us what the message is of the story, and it has no sort of emotion attached. So let's figure out how we can make this a much better summary. And we're moving on to step 2. You're going to revise, or step 3, excuse me. You're going to revise your summary. So what I want you to do is to just draw a line under the first draft, because you're going to write the second draft right underneath it. So a good summary has a few things in it. The first thing is that it should have some elements of who did something, what did they do, Where did they do it? When did they do it? Why did they do it? And how was it done? So, or as much of these things in the story to make sense. Okay, so those are the 6 W's. Your summary should have some elements of those. And our first draft did. We had a kid who did, and he was a shepherd. We don't really see where, but we have the town and we have people. We don't see why or how. So there are some things that are in there, but not everything. All right, so the second thing you can do to revise is to integrate chronological stems, and include the author's name followed by active verbs. So I have some stems for you to use, but the idea of chronology is that your summary should talk about the text or the story or whatever in the order that it's written. Okay, and our summary does that. It is in order, absolutely, because it just is. But what it doesn't have are active verbs. So I'll show you what some of those could be in a second. And then also mixing in some strong connotative verbs. So connotation shows emotion, or gives us some, they're kind of loaded verbs that give us more meaning behind them. And then using adjectives and adverbs. And when we look at adjectives and adverbs, we notice that adverbs, they start with the same prefix ad, which is to give more meaning. So adjectives, they give more meaning to nouns, and adverbs give more meaning to verbs. So that helps us get more understanding of the text as well. Now, also what would be great to put into your summary is to integrate at least one appositive. And that's something that we'll talk about in class if you're not sure what it is, but it's a noun phrase. It functions like an adjective, so it gives more meaning to a noun. And you can also use advanced punctuation. So what I mean by this is using semicolons, or perhaps using colons or dashes to help set off appositives. If you're not comfortable doing that, don't do it until you get some instruction on how to do it, but it's another way to add depth of meaning to your summary. So here are the stems that I was speaking about. I want you to use this to begin. All right, so the author or speaker begins by or begins with. Okay, so that's to start your first sentence of your summary. Then the next 2 sentences, so they're setting you up to write a 4-sentence summary right now. So you can add more detail, but I want a minimum of 4 sentences. In the body, I want you to use at least 2 of these stems. So Aesop follows this with, following this Aesop, and then you're adding action verbs. Okay, transitions, in order to transition, then shifts to, moves to compare, then contrast, and exemplifies. So these are words that help to give meaning to the text. And then finally, the last sentence should say something like Aesop concludes by or with, or finally Aesop reminds. So that's how I want you to finish this. We're going to ignore this part for now. So go ahead and pause the video and write your second draft underneath your first draft. Okay, so we're back. Here is the second draft that I wrote for this story. Yours may or may not look like this, and that's okay. As long as you are attempting to make some of those moves, then you are definitely upgrading your summaries and showing your understanding of the text. So let's read through what I wrote. I've underlined some of the phrases that I added to add emphasis so that you can see the description, the connotation of the verbs, to show how it, deepens the meaning. So here we go. Aesop begins by describing a little boy who happens to be a shepherd who is caring for his sheep. While bored, he decides to have a little fun by alerting his community to an attack, even though it isn't true. In a panic, and with much concern for the boy's welfare, The armed villagers approach to help the boy, who is discovered laughing. The townsfolk, however, don't find this funny. Aesop then implies that a few weeks pass. After this time, the boy, bored once again, decides to prank the villagers a second time. The community attempts to come to his rescue, and yet they find a similar scene. The boy hadn't learned his lesson. The very next day, though, the wolf, carnivorous appetite in full season, stalks the boy and his flock and eventually attacks. The boy's cries are left unanswered, and he is viciously devoured. So this draft has a lot of language to help us get deeper into the story. So describing him as a little boy rather than a kid gives us a visual. Like a little boy, most people might say is like 10 years or younger, right? So he is a small, immature child. He happens to be a shepherd. So this is an example of a positive phrase that is describing the boy. So that adds more detail. Who is caring for his sheep. And so he has a job, and he has a kid who is thoughtful enough to be caring for sheep. So while he is a little boy, he also has a big responsibility. But he also is a little boy, and he was getting bored. So adding this while bored gives us insight into his state of mind. He makes a decision to have some fun. And so there he goes. He alerts the community about an attacking wolf, even though it isn't true. In a panic, so describing how the townspeople were, and of course they're concerned. There's a boy who's they think is being attacked. Villagers come armed, so they're ready to fight. But then they find the boy laughing. Not good. This right here just tells us it's a contrast between what the villagers are expecting, and then they find this kid laughing. The townsfolk don't find this funny. And then we're hearing from the author again. He implies, we don't know this for sure, but this is what he is implying. The boy is bored once again, so he does it a second time. And then they do come to his rescue. They attempt to come to his rescue. However, they find a similar scene. There's nothing to rescue from because there really isn't a wolf there. The boy clearly hadn't learned his lesson. So we're talking about getting at the message behind this whole story with that statement. The very next day, though, a wolf, carnivorous appetite in full season, which is a great phrase to tell us this wolf, is hungry. Carnivorous because he likes to eat meat. Stalks the boy and flock and eventually attacks. The boy's cries are left unanswered, and he is viciously devoured. Because he is a little boy, we can imagine him really crying. He's legitimately afraid, but they don't come to get him, and he is viciously devoured. So that is an upgrade. It's an effective summary, and hopefully your summary looks similar to this. Or if not, you can take some of these keys and some of how I was able to do this to copy. You can use this to help you upgrade your summaries. Hope this is helpful. Take care.